Hi everyone, welcome to the Spark channel. When you see this video, this tells me that you already attempted the question as it was posted on the group. Let's see what we have here. We are given h at x, so I'm just gonna change that h at x. I know that everyone can agree with me that this equation we can write it as y to be equals to negative 3 to the power x minus 1. So the first question wants you to determine the coordinates of the y-intercept. Remember, how do we find the y-intercept? To find the y-intercept, we're going to let the value of x to be equals to 0, meaning on the given equation where there's x, we need to substitute 0. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say this is equals to y will be equals to negative 3 to the power 0 minus 1. Where there's x, what do? We sub in the value 0. So now you need to be very careful when you punch this on the calculator as minus 3 to the power 0. Remember that the original equation, the standard form for a exponential function, it's in the form of y it's equals to a multiplied by b to the power x plus q. This is the original equation of the graph. I'm going to explain why I need you guys to get this right. This part here, it's your standard form. So this tells you that on our graph, the value of a is minus 1. So we can write this graph as minus 1. Inside the bracket, we have 3 to the power 0. So now the 3 is the value of b. So now I think everyone understands. Now the 3 is the value of b. Where there's x, we substituted 0 minus 1. Because if you put it wrong on the calculator, you're going to get this, you're going to lose the 2 mark. So now we can see that 3 to the power 0 is just 1, which will give us minus 1 minus 1. Therefore, what is the value of y? The value of y is just negative 2. We already have the x value. We have the y value. So what will be the coordinate of the y-intercept? The x is 0. And we're going to have the negative 2 as the corresponding y value. Now, let's explain why h does not have an x-intercept. Why h does not have an x-intercept? Please note that most of the time, if you don't have the x-intercept, your graph will be in the form of number 1. Your graph will be in the form of y is equals to minus a multiplied by b to the power x minus q. If it's like this, this tells you that the value of b is greater than 1. That's the first option. The second option, your graph will be in the form of minus, where we're going to say it's minus a multiplied by b to the x minus q. Now look at b. The value of b should be less than 1 or greater than 0. So if you have one of this graph, just know that your graph won't have what? Your graph won't have the x-intercept. If your graph is in this form, look at this graph. It's minus a, this graph, the given graph, h at x. It's equals to what? H at x is equals to minus, inside the bracket, 1, times the value of b, which is 3 to the power x, then we minus the value of q, which is 1. But look at the value of b here. The value of b is 3, and 3 is greater than 1. So is the first option. So if it's in this form, your graph will look like this. Just know that the asymptote. So to answer this question, we're going to say the asymptote of the graph is going to be below the x-intercept. So it's going to be below the x-axis. Not say the x-intercept, but let's say it will be below the x-axis. So what I'm trying to say is that your asymptote will be somewhere here, because it should be, if this is my x, this is my y, it should be below. But now, since the value of b is greater than 1 and a is negative, your graph will look like this. Your graph should look like this. So it's for the first method. If the value of A is negative, yeah. So now let me explain what will happen if the value of B is between, let's say the value of B is between these numbers 1 and if, let's write it down, if the y is in the form of minus A multiplied by B to the x minus Q, and now let's say B is less than 1, greater than 0. Most of the time you'll see that the value of B is a fraction. How will the graph look like? Let's quickly do. Remember we said these are the two options where the graph won't cut the x-axis. It's either you're going to get one of these two. We already explained this one. You know how will the graph look like. This is the shape of the graph. What about if the value of B, let's assume that the value of B was 1 over 3. Remember 1 over 3 is between what? It's between 1 and 0. So how will the graph look like? The graph will look like this. We know that the asymptote is below the x-axis. Now your graph will move in this shape. This is how the graph will look like. So these are some of the things that you need to understand. So now the answer for this question, you just say the asymptote is below the x-axis. You are done. You'll get that 1 mark. So I'm just trying to go into too much details. I'm just trying to go into too much details so that you guys can understand this. Let's try and draw the sketch, because now there's no need for us to answer this question. We already answered the question. Remember, we already know that this graph is in the first method form. It's in that form, and we said the graph will look like that. Let's go put it on the given sketch. If I put it like this, then now let's talk about the y-intercept. Remember, we calculated the y-intercept as what? Minus 0 and minus 2. So I'm just going to substitute, my guys. I know that this will be my y-intercept here. I'm just going to name it at 0 is to negative 2. But now, remember the value of Q. The value of Q is your asymptote. What I'm trying to say is that this guy here, this is the value of Q, which is your horizontal asymptote. So let's go and say y is equal to that minus 1. So remember the shape of the graph. How will the graph look like? It will look like that. You just have to put the graph, then you are good to go. Simple. We put the graph like this, it cuts there, then this is your graph. I'm sorry about maybe we can just fix and do the correct graph, like the shape. So now what we said is that we're going to have my y-intercept, which is 0 and minus 2, and then the graph will move like this. It cuts the x, then it continues going down. That's your graph. Let's see the last question. This was an easy. They want us to describe the transformation of h, the transformation of h to that j. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to check the difference between, because this is just 1 mark. Remember our h at x was equals to negative 3 to the power x minus 1. What I need you to do is to find the difference between these two equations. What is the difference? This one, the x is negative, the new graph, the x is negative, and the old one, the x is positive. So this tells us that we started with positive x like this, then this changed into negative x. So if the x changes from positive to negative, just know that the reflection is about the y-axis. So the reflection is about the y-axis. But let's assume that this is the correct answer. Let's assume that this was like x and y, and this changed into the x. This time the y is the one that is changing the sign. So this tells you that the reflection is about the x axis. But for this solution, the correct answer is this first one, because we can see the only thing that is changing is the value of x from positive to negative. So the correct answer is that the reflection is it's about the y-axis. Okay, and this is how you answer the question that has to do with exponential equations. Thank you very much for watching the lesson. If you like the lesson, please make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss the next lesson.